Hey guys, I'm posting my Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders series. In it, we're going to talk about the history of the team today, the TV show, appearance standards, finances, all of that. Worked really hard on it, and I really hope that y'all enjoy it. So we're starting in the year 1961, and here are the first Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. You may notice it's boys and girls. They were actually just high school cheerleaders, and they were called the Cowbells and Bows. Unfortunately, though, they weren't really capturing the audience's attention very much. Tik Tok, the Cowboys manager, said it just wasn't really working. He wanted cheerleaders that were a lot more entertaining, and the solution to his problem came in the form of a stripper. So this is Bubbles Cash. She was a stripper in Dallas. She went to a Dallas Cowboys football game, and she was walking down the stands, and people were obsessed with her. I mean, she's super cute. But that is how Tik Tok got the inspiration. He wanted the audience and the players to look at his cheerleaders the way that they were looking at Bubbles Cash, and thus became the Dallas Cowboy Cheerleaders. Originally, it was only 7 of them. They started in 1971, and they were, rocking these sweet outfits. They're more of a pom team. The high school cheerleaders had been doing stunts and stuff. This is more of a glamorous dance team. They had Texie Waterman as their choreographer, and she choreographed their moves specifically for dancing on a football field, which was unique. And they also had Suzanne Mitchell as their manager, who was originally Tik Tok's secretary, and he just asked her if she wanted to take on the job, and she ran with that bitch. And Suzanne Mitchell was super fiery, super scary, but also amazing. She created their first rule book, and there were a lot of rules. Some of them being don't pout, you can't wear jeans, you can't smoke cigarettes, you can't have too much to drink, can't talk to the athletes, can't wear your uniform out, you have to know the Star-Spangled Banner, and then other motivational stuff like don't take it for granted, here are ways to help your feet when you're dancing, etc. But the most important rule of all was that everything must be approved by Suzanne Mitchell. And she was scary and she was strict. And she wanted to be scary and strict because this had never happened before. This was unheard of in the NFL at the time. And she even had girls spy on them to make sure that they were following all of her rules, because she was trying to, prevent controversy. She wanted them to stay classy, to stay on top of their behavior, and that way, hopefully, they wouldn't get too much flack about anything. Of course, the controversy was going to come anyways. And we just discussed all of the rules that they had. Now, despite having all of those rules, they were only getting paid $15 a game. And not at all for practicing, which they did pretty much every day of the week. They did, however, get to wear these fabulous uniforms, which were created by Paula Van Wagner in 1972. And they have only changed these uniforms 6 times since they first created them, just changing go-go boots to cowboy boots, which I prefer the go-go boots personally, and adding crystals onto the uniform. But as hard to believe as it may be, not everyone was a fan of these outfits. It was Texas in the 1970s, and even though things were becoming more progressive, for most Texans at the time, this was a lot to start seeing all of a sudden. Specifically, the Dallas Cowboys coach's wife was not a fan at all. And as Suzanne Mitchell put it, it was just too much boob for her, which I don't get what that means, really. At one point, they even had them put extra fabric over the top area so that it would be more modest, but that didn't last very long because, shockingly, most people don't prefer the modest version. And if you want to know more about the whole feminism aspect of it, I highly recommend watching Daughters of the Sexual Revolution. It's a movie all about how they were pushing boundaries left, right, and center, and it is a great movie. Thankfully, though, Tik Tok didn't give 2 shits what people thought about the cheerleaders because he personally loved them, and I think he knew that most other people also loved them. So they're outrageous and fabulous. Are you kidding? And as Texie put it, the kind of girl that they were looking for was all-American, sexy, from a good background, innocent but hot, look but don't touch kind of vibes. That's a lot to live up to. And they did achieve that look, I think. They managed to blend all of those things that don't super go together, and ta-da, they're beautiful. But unfortunately, that did come at the cost of a lot of girls' self-esteem and health, quite honestly. And Suzanne Mitchell even said to them routinely, all of you could afford to lose 7 pounds because the camera will make you look bigger. I'm not sure any of them could lose 7 pounds without disappearing. She would also print out pictures of them and circle problem areas and with like, lose this out on the side. And she'd also, one of her biggest techniques, she said, was just putting them in the mirror with her and saying, what do you think is wrong? And just having them point out flaws that they thought of themselves, which is a recipe for body image issues, which I don't think is a shock to anyone that they developed those. Most of them did. And many of the former cheerleaders have talked about all the ways that they used to try and achieve that beauty standard. And I mean, it's crazy. Diuretics and weight loss supplements, and which are all basically just diuretics anyways, and eating disorders, sauna suits where they're essentially like working out in trash bags, and they would all turn the heat up, including Suzanne Mitchell and Taxi, the choreographer, were helping them to do these disordered behaviors, so that they could be thin and pretty. But it turns out that really makes you think not very well of yourself later on in life, and it really is damaging. Who knew? I say that jokingly, but I'm not sure that they knew at the time. Like, I don't know. I mean, it was really popular to do that kind of stuff, and nobody really talked about it being harmful until pretty much now. So anyways, the 1976 Super Bowl rolls around, and of course everyone knew that the cheerleaders were going to be on TV if the Cowboys were in the Super Bowl, and they were. So it was pretty much a given that those cheerleaders would be on there. What they did not prepare for was that cameraman would pan over to one of the cheerleaders and she winked at him, and the world apparently just collectively went wild over that wink, and it shot the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders into fame pretty much overnight, and things started changing rapidly. Like, they thought that they were famous before. It was about to get crazy. After that wink, they were everything to people, and they got in commercials, they got in TV specials, they had 2 movies made about them, and of course they're still featured in tons of stuff today. And here they are on the set of Love Boat, which was a movie that they starred in. And actually, there's a fantastic story behind this, because one of the things that Suzanne Mitchell had said was, you will not shoot them from the ground up. So they're wearing short outfits, you know, not in this picture, but in the movie they are. And they did it anyways, you know, because Hollywood knows no boundaries. And Suzanne Mitchell kicked the camera into the pool that was on the set. And she just said no, which is exactly what she should have said and should have done. And I'm so proud of her. Anyways, they ended up getting what they wanted. They did shoot the movie, and they weren't filmed from the ground. Wow, it's so easy to do that, huh? They also started Showgirls. It's not called that at all. Show Group in 1976. And that was like the elite squad, very few girls that would perform at special events, especially this variety show that was called America and Her Music. And they also were doing lots of community service events. They routinely visited veterans hospitals. That was one of their main things. And this is, of course, also the year that tryouts became out of control, like crazy, like thousands of girls trying out for this squad. And apparently Suzanne was always looking for characters in tryouts. They were really interested in diversity. Not diversity of body types, of course, but diversity of races. They were very inclusive, and they actually were, I mean, integrating a lot, considering it was Dallas in the 70s. So what Suzanne really meant by characters was a type of girl for every type of girl that existed within the skinny, pretty Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders mold. And she achieved that mostly, I think. And here's one of the molds, pigtails. And that's Tammy. That was like her signature thing. She's adorable. You cannot look at her and not smile. Like, look at that picture. You cannot not smile at that. You can't. And so the Cowboys were kind of secondary at that point to the cheerleaders, but they were about to get hit with a big scandal. 1978, Debbie Does Dallas comes out. And you can probably tell by this nice little caption they have at the top that it's a rated X film. It's a sexy film. And unfortunately, she was wearing the Dallas Cowboys uniform, not associated with them at all, except for the fact that she was trying to look like them, but she's not a cheerleader. And that was obviously some bad press for them, and people dragged them through the mud for it, of course. Luckily, Suzanne Mitchell is an absolute badass, and she went after their asses for it. She sued them, and they actually ended up having to have bodyguards around her because apparently the mob was involved with this film, and she had some threats. And she actually was held at knife point during the lawsuit, like in an elevator after the court on one day, and she fought back. This woman is made of steel. I would never mess with her. Never. And it was a good thing that she was made of steel because these girls went through a lot. They had a lot of disturbing stuff happen to them. People sent them like explicit cartoons. They sent them knives. They had stalkers, multiple of them, and it's just horrifying. But anything that happened, you know, the stalkers, the inappropriate movies, everything, abusive spouses, Suzanne was there for them, always protected them, always was doing the best that she could. And Suzanne has actually said that she was R-worded twice. And so she knew how it felt to be alone, to be afraid, and she wanted them to have somebody that they could trust and that would be there for them no matter what. And I just think that is one of the sweetest things I've ever heard. And she was there for them no matter what. She never had kids. These were her children, straight up. So 1979, 1 year after Debbie Does Dallas, they grace us with this fantastic poster. Image fixed. They're perfect again. But wait, no, of course not. Of course not. Someone has to go and ruin it. Of course they do. So some former cheerleaders, not current cheerleaders, decided to copy this poster. And who did they copy it with? None other than our friend from our last series, Hugh Hefner. Oh my God, Playboy. Except they're all topless because it's Playboy. And it was a huge scandal. And Debbie Does Dallas had just come out, and they had all just kind of recovered from that. It was this whole deal, and now it's like every which way they turned. This wasn't sexy enough. This was not sexy enough for them. There had to be more. And then the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders, because of those two events, became a huge target for the feminist movement because they decided that it was exploitive, that they were doing this. And I think a lot of people would be tempted to look at jobs like this and say that they're exploitive, but according to the cheerleaders, they were not at all. And for starters, this was an organization that was being managed and coached by a woman, choreographed by a woman, and filled with women who were doing it voluntarily. And they actually felt like it was really insulting that feminists were essentially, in their eyes, implying that they were too dumb to make a choice for themselves, that they were somehow being exploited without their knowledge, even though they were doing it voluntarily. And their point was basically, this whole movement is about women doing whatever they want, right? Because I'm doing what I want and now I'm being insulted for it. It was very women against women, but this is what they wanted to do. And this looks like a lot of fun, so I do not blame them. Suzanne also pointed out that they all had to be either working, married, or in school to be on the team. This could not be their only gig. Not like it could be anyways, because it was only $15 a game. So like, they're just not possible. But her point was that they had other lives. They weren't just this girl. They weren't just for men to watch. First of all, they were doing it for their own enjoyment, but second of all, they had things going on. It wasn't just this. Fortunately, they also had some good presence in 1779. In 1979, they did their first USO tour during the Korean War. Apparently, the soldiers were having a very hard time mentally, and a show group went over there and danced for them during the holidays, which was super cute. And what was not super cute was that Suzanne Mitchell was almost killed on one of their USO tours. So that was part 1. Part 2 is already up on my channel. Please go watch it and leave a like and a comment on this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want to see more.